Aloha, filmmakers and storytellers. I'm Matthew Salanoa, and welcome to my podcast, Final Cut. On this podcast, I review movies and I critique them. I suggest scenes that would improve the storytelling so that audiences could connect better with your movie. I'm putting this out there to you, Hollywood. I want to work with you. I want to make Marvel movies. I want to make 87 North action movies. I love movies. I love stories. I love science fiction. I'm a filmmaker of over 17 plus years, making documentaries, short films, trailers, ads. I've worked on various different types of movie sets, and I've supported a lot of filmmakers in telling their stories better. And I really love the whole process. I love storytelling itself, so much so I made this podcast as a message to all of you. I want to make your movies better. Let me help you make your movies better. And if you look at this episode, this will be the new way I do videos. You look at the previous 9 episodes, I'm still trying to be a podcaster. But from this episode on, I'm truly trying to be a filmmaker, talking to other filmmakers and storytellers. These are the things I would say to you. And I might be a little harsh and it might be a little crude. But at the end of the day, what I care about is telling the story right. That is what matters the most. Because a story told well, a good story told well, that's the thing that makes the audience come back to you over and over and over again. Doesn't always work, but most of the time, if the audience connects with you emotionally, you got another ticket sale. That's all I'm looking for, is to help movies be as good as they possibly can be. So with that being said, I hope you liked today's episode. Welcome to Final Cut. Oh no, it's my evil twin brother, Matt Jira. It's podcasting time. Please forgive the noise in the background. Love Hurts. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it stars Ke Huy Quan. I hope I'm getting that name right. Fantastic actor. I saw him in Loki. If you don't recognize him, he's Short Round, going back to Temple of Doom. He's been all over the board, from acting, stunts, directing. This is a massive talent here. We also have in this movie Ariana DeBose, who is Justin Craven, Leo Tipton, Sean Astin, Sam from Lord of the Rings, and Mustafa Shakir, who has a lot of cool credits. I only really know him from Luke Cage Season 2, but he was definitely the standout best part of this movie. I'll get to that later in the spoiler section. But up front, if you're looking for a good time, it is a fast, fun adventure, but there's no doubt the movie did leave me feeling like I wanted more. I wanted a little more story. I wanted a little bit more going on. I wanted the action to have a little bit more to say. And I'll get into it more later, but I do think this feeling of lack of story is really a huge drawback for this movie. And I do feel like, look, this is why I pitched myself hard to you guys, 87 North. If you want to hit the vein, you've got to put storytelling first. I get that this movie is an action movie showcase. You really want to show what you guys can do. But I have to level with you here. If most of what you can do is stuff we've already seen before, you are not going to get the audience, and especially if it's not balanced by a very well-told story. But I do have to give a shout out to director Jonathan Eusebio, who's been on stunts for shows like Kenobi and John Wick 2. He was an assistant director on Kate, Deadpool 2, Fast 8. So he's got some good credits behind him, and I'd say this is a pretty good directorial debut. So as spoiler-free as I can get, I did enjoy the movie. I do think people should go see it. You will definitely enjoy the stunts. And Mustafa Shakir, I remember him doing some really slick moves fighting Luke Cage in season 2. And he's an actor who's got this, there are these actors out there who have an atmosphere. They have an energy that comes out of them, and he's totally one of those actors. And actually, I'll say this about the movie that's a huge strength. The trailer makes it look like he's only in one scene, if you don't watch the movie, you won't see that he has more material in this movie. He goes beyond that one scene, and I would say that's a credit to the trailer because it's a surprise. It actually brings a lot of heart to the movie. I think his parts of the movie, there should have been more of him. The movie must always follow its heart. And if the main character, if that's not really the heart of the movie, if you're not telling that well enough, you got to follow wherever the true heart of the movie is. And he has a wonderful subplot with Leo Tipton, who plays in this film, because I didn't go over it before. Ki Huan's character has been working for years as a real estate salesman. Leo Tipton plays his assistant. And literally at the start of this movie, unfortunately for Mr. Kwan, or as he plays in the movie, Marvin Gable, his old lover has resurfaced, believed to be dead. And not only that, she brings with her the coming storm, the baggage of his past. His brother and a crime syndicate that comes with him are looking for her because because Mr. Marvin Gable was supposed to have killed her long ago. And so not only does love come back into his life, but his horrible past that he has been running from comes back with him too. Now, on paper, that's a very good premise, but the delivery of this premise, I'm sorry to say, it's a bit limited. And look, if you had budget limitations, if you wanted to tell more story, but either it didn't work or, for some reason the studio told you to cut it, then I'm sorry. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that you didn't do your job. I'm trying to tell you there's perhaps a way, if you didn't have those things or you just didn't think of those things, here's some ideas that I'll have coming up about how to flesh that out a bit better next time. And maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but this is what I'm here to talk about. So all in all, I do think it's a fun movie to watch. If you like action, you're going to get plenty of action. It's a very silly, easy to watch movie, but I do think there's a lot of missed potential here for really good storytelling. I do feel my biggest complaint with the movie is that all of the action is in the trailer. And it's a good trailer. There's a reason I wanted to see this movie. The trailer really sells the action. Unfortunately, the majority of the signature action moments are in the trailer. And with the exception of the Mustafa Shakir stuff, which is not in the trailer at all, with the exception of his introduction, there's really not much to go on with this movie. It's so fast. We get little character elements, not enough to hang on. But that being said, definitely for the next one, 87, you gotta remember stories gotta come first, and you gotta level it up. You gotta give people something they've never seen before. That's the only way to grapple on. If you really want the audience to stay with you, they have to know that you've got something that nobody else has. And that has to start with your particular storytelling style. Now, I know all of you are talented filmmakers. You're a studio made out of stunt performers who for too long haven't gotten enough credit from the system itself, but know that the audience loves you, even though we may not know you. I had the pleasure of meeting the stunt performer Eric Betts when I was going out to meet the Red Ranger, Austin St. John. It was a little event in Carlsbad, the Ninja Expo. It was really nice meeting the Red Ranger, but I was really surprised. I didn't know Mr. Betts would be there. But I also didn't know anything about him. I didn't know anything about the behind the scenes of Power Rangers. But when I met this guy and he walked me through his experiences and his demo reel, I realized, wow, what stunt performers have to offer. And oftentimes very good acting as well. Like he had a very good acting reel. It is a shame that too many people pigeonhole and take for granted talented people like yourselves. But that being said, it's important never to let talent go to waste. Not just to show action, but you gotta show action in a way that still emotionally gets the audience. We must always remember that action is still a form of storytelling. I felt very strongly when watching this movie that the action was fun. It was fun, but it was a lot of gags we've seen before. Jason Bourne, came out 20 years ago and started this whole thing of stunts with traditional traditional household items. I think one of the distinctive ones is it the second movie when Jason Bourne beats someone with a rolled up magazine. So the audience knows you can do this, but it's so important. You have to think not just of the stunts you're capable of, the stunts that you've done, and referring to John Wick. You have to think past that. If you're making these movies, you have to push yourselves the way some inexperienced, crazy director would. You have to ask for things that are nuts. You have to push yourself to do things that are nuts. But beyond that, what you do must be connected to a story. And this is what I want to really urge, because when I made 007, I Only Need One, it's a short film, it won some awards. I was in the position of working for a friend for the first time, and he's a stunt guy, and he's produced his own work for a long time. I oversaw some of it. I gave him notes on things. When he made improvements, he was happy at the time. And a lot of that experience led to him asking me to direct that short. And I'm proud of that short. I do think it's very cool. If you haven't seen it, I have a very cool set piece, a movie set that my dad built in my parents' backyard, or technically my backyard at the time as well. I was living with them. But, it was the first time any of us made anything with a movie set. And I had an ambitious idea to have a room with spinning mirrors and all this stuff. But when I was making that short, I realized that, kind of like this movie, Love Hurts, that he had really written and designed it to be an action showcase to promote what his stunt association could do. And it was also supposed to be a love letter to James Bond. It was a James Bond fan film. Even I Only Need One is specifically a line taken from The Man with the Golden Gun, which was the movie that our short was based on. So when it came to that, I struggled to really bring more story into it. And unfortunately, and maybe this was the case with this movie, I just couldn't. I tried to write in more for whatever reason. It just didn't work. And the movie came out to be what it is. And I totally, how some people described watching my short is actually how I felt watching this movie, where it's like, oh, this really feels like it's just here to showcase the stunts, and there's not much story going on. And that was, and it stings me, but it's also so true, because I did fight to put more story into that short film. But truth be told, if what I had written had worked, it would have been in the movie. But it just didn't work. And ultimately, I was able to add things that made the movie make more sense. But at the end of the day, it's really not a kind of movie I would make. I try to make movies from a story first. And this movie was plot first, and it was action first. And I just had to respect that this is what the movie was going to be. But, that being said, that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from when looking at this movie. I feel like I'm looking at a big version of a fan film that I did myself, Lots of action, not enough story to hang your hat on. But, again, I do think the Mustafa Shakir stuff, he's a knife wielder, and he throws feathers. Kind of ridiculous. It's a very ridiculous movie. But again, for those of you who haven't seen it, I do think you'll have a good time if you just like action. If you just like action, this is not a waste of your time. It's literally, the movie's an hour and 24 minutes, which should be your big red flag for, this is going to be a little light on story, isn't it? But other than that, I do recommend it. I do think people should see it. Just like Captain America 4. I didn't think that was a perfect movie. I'll have negative things to say about this movie, but it doesn't mean that it's not a fun movie. I generally feel like there's kind of two kinds of movies, and when we're lucky, a movie that's really special does both. There's movies that are fun, they're about the ride, and then there's movies that are great, they're about the story. They grab you emotionally. And to me, my favorite movies meet somewhere in the middle. Terminator 2, Jurassic Park. To me, those movies are the high standard. And I've gone over Terminator 2, and I've gone over Jurassic Park. And I'm coming from a very specific place when I talk about those movies, but you got to go watch those videos to see what I'm talking about. Today I'm talking about Love Hurts. So, as much spoiler free as I can get, fun time, you love action, go see it. And right now, I'm going to get into spoilers. I'm going to get into some of my problems with the movie, and then I'll talk about what I feel the movie could have used from a storytelling point of view. And if you're a filmmaker who made it, I'm not here to try and offend you or say that you didn't try to do these things or that you don't know about these things. I'm just here to tell you what I think would work best in order to really, if you had brought this movie to me and you said, we have time to shoot a little bit more action and to shoot a little bit more movie, what do you think this movie needs? I'm telling you right now, this is what I would tell you, honestly, blatantly, because to me, the film comes first. The story comes first. It's not about my ego and it's not about your ego. I care about making the best possible movie. That's how I've approached every video I've ever made with anyone. People come to me with tons of things that they didn't think would work, but I look for what can work because you have to put the project first above your ego. So that being said, let's get into what I think are the flaws of this movie in more detail. And at the end, I'm going to talk about what I felt could have been done to really lift this movie up and make it a real blockbuster hit, or at least reach a little bit wider of an audience, because it does seem like there wasn't much reaction from this movie coming out, and it's only been out for a few weeks, and it's already dripping out of theaters, which is a shame, because I do think there's a lot of talent behind the camera and in front of the camera in this movie. I do think this movie deserves a little bit more attention. But that being said, it is a really tough economy. If people have to pick between eggs and movie tickets, people are picking eggs, man. So that being said, here comes my critique and then my suggestions. Here we go. All right, here we are in the spoiler section of my review. I'll be critiquing the movie. This really works better if you've seen the movie. And as I said in the top, I've never quite marketed my podcast correctly. My podcast, this YouTube channel, its whole goal is to talk about storytelling. I celebrate when storytelling works, I talk about it. When it doesn't work, I talk about it. Sometimes I do just give generic reactions because I just want people to go see something. But most of the time, if you see the videos longer than 20 minutes, I'm trying to analyze the story and how it all works. So here we are. I'm talking about Love Hurts. This is spoilers. But before I even get to what doesn't work, I actually like the beginning of this movie. It's very sweet. It's very cute. It kind of feels like a little short film about a happy little man and a happy little life. But I would say, right up front, although the action's good, we get straight to the action. We are introduced to his life, his depressed assistant, and then immediately as he enters his office, we meet Mustafa Shakir, who is, I guess he's the Raven, but it starts off with the Raven knocking him out and then him waking up, and it's just the beginning of this action stream. And I think it's a little bit of a shame that because we're in the headspace of Marvin Gable, Ki Kwan, being knocked out and waking up, the sound design is not letting us listen to Mustafa Shakir's poem. He has a little poem that he's written, and it kind of sounds beautiful, but we can't fully hear it or appreciate it because we're in that, the subjective headspace of watching our main character wake up from being knocked out. I really don't think he even really needed to be knocked out. I think it was kind of an abrupt drop in the energy of the movie. But nonetheless, the fact that we have the Raven starting off with his little poem, it made him a very distinct and interesting character. And I would say immediately more intriguing than our main character. It is nice to think that your main character is cute and sweet and fun, but that's not really enough to hang your hat on. I think if you look at the Deadpool movies, each one of them does a good job of really giving the main character an emotional place to begin from. Even if it's Deadpool 1 where he starts off kind of miserable, his life ramps up into happiness. So there's always an emotional direction for the character. If you just start off, he's all happy-go-lucky, and then here's a note. Well, it makes me a little uncomfortable, but that's still not a little bit of discomfort and all that. Not an emotional headspace. But when we introduce this side character, he is in an emotional headspace. He's reading a poem, and he wants to know what his rival, Mr. Gable, thinks about it. And he has kind of a performance where he's afraid of criticism, but he's ready to hear it. You know what I mean? And I like that. I like that all of this can be read right off of this guy right away. He has a lot to bring as an actor, and I definitely got to see more of the. I know he's in other stuff, and I know I got to see it at some point. But I just love action, so if he's not in an action movie, I probably haven't seen it. Or if it's not a superhero movie, mostly, because that's where I put all my money. But then we just kind of get straight to, the interrogation. Where's your ex-girlfriend? But literally, because Marvin Gable does not know where she is, that's not an emotional place. So although we're engaged with the antagonist of the scene, we still don't have anything to grapple on for the protagonist of the scene. I do feel like the movie either should have begun with a flashback of his romance with this other woman, and maybe it misleads us and doesn't show us what happens. Or perhaps I really feel like as we got to more and more reveals of his character, I just sincerely believe that the beginning of this movie should have started with a huge, brutal action sequence, or at least something, even if you don't have the money for a full-on action sequence, something, an individual scene, or two individual scenes, something short but meaningful, that shows just how vicious and violent Marvin Gable used to be, and have it lead to the moment of him covered in blood, looking ravenous, and being with our lead actress, whose character name, Rose, to Rose, that we should have connected both his violence and his love for Rose in a single scene, and it should have been a little bit more passionate. He really should have been a man and not this kind of innocent geek at the beginning of the movie. Let's see him be this fierce, brutal man, and take no shit from anyone man. Just, we don't need dialogue. Just, he's beating someone up and he's protecting her, and all we need to know is that he's not with her anymore. Then just a little voiceover. I had a life once, and I had a love, but but one day that all ended, and now I have this life. You know what I mean? Literally establish him with a completely different voice, and he should have really done some voice work to make a very distinct character out of the old Gable. Sounds a bit like Cable, but if we just had a nice opening, it wouldn't have to be a lot, a couple shots that just establish his brutality and his romance, and we should really feel it. The one thing I would say is a huge flaw with this movie is I did not feel there was a legitimate chemistry between Marvin and Rose. I really didn't feel it there. Even if they were attracted to each other, I just didn't feel it being there. And this is something movies are made quickly, and sometimes people just want to work with who they want to work with, and that's fine. But there's a reason why the Spider-Man movies always have chemistry tests with whoever's going to be Spider-Man and whoever's going to be Mary Jane. There has to be a literal chemistry, something, even if they're just acting, the chemistry has to be felt between them. Because if you don't feel it in person, it is not going to come off on camera. Why else does Christopher Nolan sit right next to the camera when he watches a performance? Because he knows if he's there and he's seeing what the camera is seeing, then he's seeing the performance. He's feeling if it works or not. And that's really how you got to approach casting movies. Like, I'm sorry to say, I like both actors. I don't think either of them did a bad job, but I don't feel like they had a natural chemistry with each other. They both seemed a little stiff. And again, if you are making a movie that's you just have no time to really make, nailing that chemistry is number one. And maybe it was chemistry that came off in the auditions, but for whatever reason, in the footage and what we see in the movie, I felt nothing for them. I actually felt a lot of chemistry with the Raven and the assistant Ashley, and you know, it starts so naturally with the poetry, the fact that she reads his poetry and is so touched by it, and then the way they interact with each other when they both look at each other. You know, there's a kind of unspoken magic there that feels legitimate, and whether it's just them acting great or not, their chemistry I felt was alive. I felt like there was something there. You know, it's in their countenance, it's in their physicality, it's in the way they touch each other later when they're holding each other's faces. I just thought, you know, there's something that feels raw and untapped, and that's the feeling the audience needs to feel from your main characters. Number one, you know, you could have easily told this movie entirely from the Raven's point of view if that's where the emotion was from, even if technically he's seeing this other guy's life. The movie should always be told from some kind of emotional point of view. Either you start with that emotional point of view or you get to that emotional point of view, and that's how we witness the rest of the movie. So that's what works about Star Wars. We start off with these robots who are just witnessing everything, and then we get to Luke. And what's Luke? He's whiny. He's a bit whiny, but that's still an emotional point of view. His emotion is, I'm bored with my life. I want more. You know, he wants more out of his life. And unfortunately for him, he gets more. And you watch him lose the life that he had, that he kind of resisted leaving. Not just because his uncle told him to, but because some part of him was afraid. You know what I mean? And even though people call this a basic generic character, but it is a character. It is a character that you can relate to immediately as you see it. This little suburban farm boy who kind of has a decent life, and that's partly why he can't leave it, because he knows he has a good life. But when it's violently taken away from him and he has no choice but to go on the adventure that he said he wanted, that's storytelling. When the story, because this happens, therefore this happens, as the South Park writers write. And the movies that don't work so well don't understand those storytelling principles. You know, again, if you start off emotionally, or at least I would say, if you want to start off with cute little happy Asian guy, you have to, after this first encounter with Raven, do that cut to a flashback. And again, it could be done in literally half a day or half an evening. I could literally see it in my head. It's nighttime. You don't need even a set. You need an outdoor location with a view of the city and just enough light to suggest maybe we're under a billboard. We're just somewhere out of the way where no one can see us. And, you know, Ki Kwan is beating the shit out of someone, and the camera just comes around to see this bloodied, dead man. And then the camera just keeps moving, and we see the viciousness on his face. And then the camera slowly keeps creeping around, and behind him is Rose, and maybe she looks a little disheveled. Maybe you can kind of tell that maybe this man was attacking her. And he's like, this is how we met. This is the love of my life. She was being manhandled by, you know, one of one of my men, or one of the guys I worked with. And he knows I don't like that. He knows I don't know, or something. I don't know. We don't really need all the details. All we need to know is he was brutally beating this man for the woman he loved, and she sees who he is, and she's not frightened by the violence. She's not frightened by the terrible look in his eyes, she sees someone she loves. And he, witnessing that, softens just enough, and they embrace and kiss. And he kisses her, maybe not super hard, but he kisses her good. He kisses her like a man who gets what he wants. And that's the man he was. You know what I mean? And back to, so I'm this nice guy now. You need character. You need character definition. Character definition in the early part of your storytelling is everything. And although, again, going to Jurassic Park, although Jurassic Park it does start off with some great dinosaur violence and a death. When we meet Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, we're meeting them kind of just enjoying their work and enjoying their day. But as soon as they're away from all their coworkers, they have this little conflict about children, and you realize this is kind of an ongoing thing that they have, where she wants children and he doesn't. And it's never spoken directly with words, but it's their conflict that builds to later in the movie when they're at the park, and now Alan is surrounded by these kids, and one won't shut up about dinosaurs and other theories that might be better than his own theories, other books that might be better than his book. And the other kid, maybe she has a crush on him, maybe she doesn't. He doesn't know, but it's kind of weird. And he just wants to check out and get away from these kids because he wants nothing to do with kids. He just wants to be a grown-up, living grown-up life, doing grown-up things. And the story forces him, because of the T-Rex popping out and eating the lawyer and crushing the car with the kids, Alan is forced to protect them. His natural paternal instinct comes out, and he protects the kids and guides them through a journey. And by the time they reach, although so much carnage happens and you don't feel like a story is happening, but a story is happening when characters are being pushed to do things that they would not do otherwise. So, and that can be the plot interfering, like the dinosaur attacks because of the hacking, of Nedry's hacking. But when we get to that tree scene where he gets both kids up to the top of the tree, where he knows they're at least out of the biting distance of the T-Rex, that's when the kids nestle up against him because they have no other choice. They just need someone to give them warmth and comfort. And he kind of acts, and it's a subtle thing, but he acts just a little bit afraid of it, and then he lets them in, and then he hugs them both. And for the first time in the movie, he acts like he gives a damn about kids, and it's because he finds out he actually does. And from that point on, he's much softer with the children. He talks to them more gently. He's a little more caring. He's a little more playful. Even the scene that seems like it's just a joke, right? When they go up to the fence and he goes, ah, and you see he makes the boy laugh, right? He's trying to get a rise out of the kids because he's actually having a good time with them. Everything that he said in the beginning of the movie is now something that he's totally on the other side. You know what I mean? Although as an obstacle, as a plot device, they're up against the fence. He's already over the fence and he doesn't know it. He's over the fence of, I don't want kids. I don't like kids. They're smelly and gross and expensive. And I just want to live adult life, drink my alcohol, and go to bed whenever I want. You know what I mean? That's where he's coming from at the start of the movie. But by the time that tree happens, he doesn't even realize it, but he's over that hill. He's over that fence. He is now, at the very least, he enjoys the company of the kids and is happy being around them in a way he never thought. And that's a beautiful story. That's a story of a man realizing he's ready to take the next step in his life and be more than just a bachelor, be more than just a guy who's happy to have his career and his girl. But man, maybe having kids, maybe being a dad sounds nice. And it's not till that end of the movie, and it's all told in these small scenes, right? It's all told with subtext. That's storytelling. And this is an action movie, it's a horror movie, it's a monster movie, but it's got this subtextual story of a man who grows up. It's a story that thematically is about evolution. It's about how life finds a way. And in his sense, he evolves by the end of that story. And it's all told in little things. It's told in looks. It's told in how he suddenly is concerned for their well-being. That's what storytelling is. That's why I have so much respect for Jurassic Park. because on the surface you look at it and go, this is a great action movie, this is a great monster movie, I'm scared the whole time, ah da 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 da. But no, the movie is so much more than that. It's got so much more going on than just the suspense of whether or not the dinosaurs will eat someone, because you only care if the dinosaurs eat someone if you care about the characters. So that being said, when it comes to this movie, like I'm saying, you don't need a lot, but you just need a little bit more just to establish the care. And as we go along, we meet two, I call them thugs, I guess. You know, they're two chucklehead gangsters working for Mr. Knuckles, Marvin Gable's brother, the leader of this little criminal group. And it's clearly not a very big group, because it's only comprised of 10 people. So, and I guess it used to be 11 when they had Marvin Gable, and 12 when they had Rose. But you know, there's nothing emotionally connecting these things. I know people think the John Wick movies don't have a story, but that's not true either. You know, the fact of the matter is, even John Wick 1 takes the time to establish how the car and the dog are gifts from his wife, that his dead wife she's someone that he misses and he longs for. He has an emotional place to come from, which is why he refuses to sell his car to the Russian guy from Game of Thrones. He's coming from an emotional place when he's making choices, and it's not just a vague reference to the past. When Keanu Reeves plays it, he's in that emotional headspace. That's why you feel it when he finds the dog dead and he just holds on to the dog. You know, you feel that. For people who think Keanu Reeves is not a great actor, I mean, there's a reason John Wick sells, and it's not just because the action is cool. When you look at that first John Wick, the way he kills people, there's an emotion to it. There's a brutality to it. More than just good choreography or stunt work. He is angry. He is killing these people with a mission on his mind, a mission of bloody revenge, the revenge for the destruction of the memory of his wife and his life. You know, and you just see it in his performance, the way he is just dispatching these people, not just quickly, but with fury. And that's all the first movie's made of. And I think what this movie really needed was, I do think we needed just another flashback. Like, if we start off with a flashback, again, a single shot can say a lot. A single shot could say a lot. Even if we back it up a little, that first shot I suggested, where maybe we start wide, bad guys attacking Rose, and Marvin Gable rushes up and starts beating him and kicking him around, and the camera gets closer, sweeps around, Rose is standing up and is both moved, grateful, and then this should be the moment of them making eye contact for the first time and falling in love. All that should happen in a single shot. That's one shot, right? You can do that in a couple hours. You can do that in a couple hours. Your next shot, okay? As this movie goes along and we start to reveal the layers of what happened in the past, and it's just, the explanation is a bit too convoluted to just leave to dialogue, where, Rose and these two guys were trying to steal from Marvin Gable's brother. And I really feel like, why make Rose the thief? It's just one level more complicated than it needed to be. I think it would have been far better if you really want this movie to work, she has to be emotionally tied to Marvin Gable from the start of the movie, and that him saving her life, it just comes off as him being a nice guy. They don't even seem in love in that one flashback scene. You know what I mean? It really, he's trying to sell it with the speech later on in the movie. It doesn't work. I really feel like we need either one more flashback, again, another one shot. You could do it in a oneer where we're inside the layer. We're inside the layer of the belly of the beast. Knuckles arcade bar, whatever the hell that place is. It looks like he runs an arcade. Okay, and we have another shot showing now this relationship is further along. Rose clearly works for Ki Kwan. Give her a throwaway line like, the deal is done, we got all the money right here. And then a little suspicious look between our other two guys. I forget their names. One of them is the one that we discover after she's kidnapped Marvin Gable. She's also kidnapped another man and cut off his finger. We discover that this man and the right hand man of Knuckles, Marvin Gable's brother, they are the ones who colluded to steal the money. And not only that, they made it look like it was Rose by herself, which I'm like, I mean, how does that even work? You know, like, wow, I just feel like it's so dumb and passable. I feel like, let's go back and show something, just how the relationships look. Show her in the position of power as the right hand man. And again, you can do it with a single shot. It can be shot in a handful of hours. A single shot wrapping around them. Show them in a place of opulence. Show them doing well. Marvin Gable, again, looking very fierce and on top of things, and nobody gives him any shade. And show her being Knuckles' right-hand man. And, you know, show their trust. You have to show. It's not tell, show it. And then just have the little looks. Everything can be done through looks. It's all about looks. Movies are all about the face, and it's all about that landscape of emotion that the face has to offer, and touch, and the interaction or lack thereof, the touch that people have. I would dare say, like, this movie ends with a fight between Marvin Gable, Ki Kwan, and the actor who plays his brother, and it's actually a very underwhelming fight, especially because it starts off with a line, "You know you could never beat me in a fight." And I'm like, you know, I just nobody knows that, because we've only seen Ki Kwan gradually get better at fighting across the movie, because I guess he's rusty, you know. And they, you know, they steal a joke from Hot Fuzz earlier when the two thugs are trying to get him, and you see Ki Kwan hopping over all the fences. Now, hey, I have hopped a 5-foot fence thanks to the Spartan race I did a month ago, and it's no easy task. I didn't do it by myself. I had help. So it is impressive that this guy hopped all these fences. But literally, it's a joke from Hot Fuzz. It's a joke. It's a stolen joke, man. Homage, whatever you want to call it. But again, it's in the trailer. All the good stuff of this movie is in the trailer. And they say people forget. People don't forget. People don't forget that quickly. You know, we have Beast Mode's reaction of, "This little monkey." You know what I mean? And it's just, you know, I don't know. It doesn't quite land. The fish does not quite land there. But it's because we don't really know where these people are coming from. They just start attacking him. But we don't get any sense from either their characters or from the dialogue that, have you always wanted to fight him? Have you always thought you were better than him? Why exactly are you so cocky in attacking him if this man is supposed to have such a reputation of being brutal? I think, you know, there's a lesson to be learned from the Kill Bill movies, is that the bride is literally, although she's technically the best assassin, all the assassins think they're the best assassin. It just happens to be that she is the best. And that's what's challenged by Vivica A. Fox in the opening scene of the movie, where she says, "You're Black Mamba?" And you see Vivica A. Fox really gives the bride a whooping in the beginning of that movie, the beginning of Kill Bill 1. And you understand, like, she does have a valid reason to say, "You're Black Mamba? I should have been called Black Mamba." But when you see that the fight ends with Vivica A. Fox trying to do an underhanded, you know, shoot you through the box, and she misses, of all things. But not only that, the bride throws a knife at her and gets an exact hit to the heart. And you realize in that exchange. Again, emotion, right? Daughter shows up, they stop fighting. Honey, don't worry about the mess. Just go over there. And the exchange of looks. Don't kill me in front of my daughter. And then finally, at the end of the fight, or at the seeming end of the fight, they called you Black Mamba. I just whooped your ass around my house. I should have been Black Mamba. You see her real opinion of herself comes out. And this is an emotional point of view that gets us to, even though we only see Vivica A. Fox in this portion of the movie, we do see her a little bit in flashbacks later. But even though this is her only real scene in the beginning of Kill Bill 1, her dialogue and the way she fights has everything to do with her character. That she is a physical match for the bride. That's why it's a great first fight. Even when the bride fights Lucy Liu, they are matches as swordsmen, but truly we know from this beginning there's a reason she's called the Black Mamba, because when she strikes, death is certain. And that specific line of dialogue is established in the second movie. But that's what our opening scene establishes, that her very name carries with it a reputation, a huge reputation. And that reputation emotionally affects all of the other assassins, who each one, they're all the best assassins in the world, but she's the best of the best. She's the Optimus Prime here. And the one with the eye patch is the Starscream. You know what I mean? But yeah, so this is what I'm talking about, where this fight happens, and all we know is that they are supposed to kill him or collect him and get information. But it's just a beat up. They're just beating him up to beat him up, and there's no point of view that it's coming from. So this is what I say. This is the director's job, and I've learned this specifically from Guillermo del Toro, that when you come in to direct actors, and when you come in to direct the story, the story is what comes first. You already have people who will design your action sequence, but even to them, you must come from an emotional standpoint, where when we first meet Blade in Blade 2, he's gunning down vampires, and he defeats them all quickly because he's trying to get to Whistler. And that's how Guillermo del Toro describes it. Like, the way he fights has everything to do with what his intention is, what his motivation is. So the very opening scenes of Blade, he's killing vampires very quickly, very expediently. The very next action sequence has these sneaky ninja vampires show up. And, this is a point where he said the script didn't really make sense because the vampires are here to deliver a message, but they start fighting. So through direction, what Del Toro said is, what we have is the heroes shoot at these ninjas first, and it forces the ninja vampires to engage the heroes, even though they've snuck in. And when it comes to our main girl vampire, Nisa, played by Lenora Valor, I forget her name, but the wonderful actress who plays Nisa, when it comes to her fighting Blade, because that's the main fight in this scene, she is part of a group of vampires that were intended to hunt Blade. So when she sees Blade, she instinctually just wants to fight him, to test him. And they have a look that kind of establishes, do you want to spar? Do you want to go at it? And she just starts going at it with him. And through direction, you see the other guy who's holding the heroes, Whistler and Norman Reedus, at gunpoint, is like surprised that she's going to go fight. So the direction is telling you emotionally where everyone is coming from. And so when the fight engages, you see they are trying to best each other. And it does end with Blade and Nisa, both with a sword in a killing position on the other. So you realize, as fighters, they are equal. Blade has finally met his match. And not only that, it's a beautiful woman, and they kind of have a chemistry that naturally builds across the movie. This is the emotional groundwork that you as a director have to lay. So even though this beginning little battle with the two thug guys, so their goal is simple. No, your job as a director is to give them an emotional point of view. And I apologize if you do understand this. I'm not trying to chastise you, Mr. Usibo, like I said. This is a pretty fun time. I'm not hating on this movie, and I'm not intending to hate on you, but I would say this is my critique. They got to be coming from an emotional standpoint, and if it's not in the dialogue, you're the director. You change that dialogue if you want to. You give them an ad lib, or you give them a line that says, give them something to chew on. These guys are actors, even though they're stuntmen, or I think they're stuntmen as well. Even though they may be stuntmen, they have the ability to do more. You have to ask for more. You have to push them to say, hey, you've always thought you could be a better fighter than this man. So we need to find some kind of indication. Either you give them a line or let them ad lib something to indicate that's where they're coming from. Like, I've always wanted to fight you. I've always wanted to see if you really are as bad as they say they are, as they say you are. Something. Give them something other than just generic bad guy who wants to beat you up. That's not an emotional standpoint. So all these things really matter, because when it comes to Sean Astin, Sam, you have the nerve to fucking kill Sam in this movie. When it comes to his character, he gets one scene, and then his very following scene is dying, and it's very generic, man. That's just so generic. We haven't had enough time to really sit with him and care if he's alive or not. And although the scene's good enough, I do think when he's talking to the brother, the scene could have really used a tighter close-up or a push-in on the brother when Sam when Sam says, he's my brother. And then you punch in on Knuckles, the actual brother of Marvin Gable. Do a little slow push-in on his face. But I'm his actual brother. And then get a little closer on Sean Astin as well, of realizing he's stepped over the line. Because all of the performances do suggest that your job as a director is to hit home what these moments really mean. That, yes, their performance gets it. Of course their performance gets it. But this is the difference between television and movies. That movies are all about hitting it home. What did you say? Are you talking to me? You need to get a little bit closer, because you have the whole screen to tell your story. It's not a TV screen. This is the movie screen. The audience is watching and wants to go, oh. The audience wants to go, oh. You want, oh no. Oh yeah. You know what I mean? You want it, whatever the reaction is, it's got to be, oh. And this was a scene that needed an oh. It needed an oh no. You stepped over the line. And the dialogue doesn't do it, and these wider close-ups don't do it. That's what the push-in is for. That's what the emotion you have to capture is for. You've got to communicate, really hit it home that you've stepped over the line. Things like that. These things really matter in the emotional storytelling. And again, when it comes to the final flashback, or when it comes to the flashback of Marvin Gable setting her free, it really feels generic. There's nothing there that feels like they have a romantic history, or even that they're romantically interested in each other. It really seems like he's just letting her go because he feels it's the right thing to do. And it makes her look innocent. It really makes her look like she had nothing to do with the theft of the Russian money. So because there's no hand-holding, there's no please don't leave me, come with me, let them get a little close, lips almost touch. Movies are all about the distance. It's all about the distance between the character and the camera. It's all about the distance between the characters and each other. It's all about the distance between the characters and the audience. Because as we get closer to the character, the audience gets closer to them too. And, it was done perfectly. I think because they're side characters, you don't have to do these things. And what you did was just perfectly fine with Mustafir, Shakir, and Leo Tipton. Mustafa, I'm sorry. The way their scenes were shot was perfect. Especially my favorite scene with them is when they're sitting on the table with a candle between them, and she asks, "Am I in danger?" And he reaches over and touches her face and pulls her forward just gently enough and says, "I'm in danger of falling." And that was nice. That was elegant. That is, I think should have been in sharp contrast to what the love was between Marvin Gable and Rose. Their love should have been a little bit more fierce. Old Marvin should be a fierce person. You have to establish a very strong distinction between his previous life and his present life. Otherwise, it just feels, we just feel like there's an absence of something. And I do feel like if you had the time, if you had the money, there should be a scene earlier. Like I say, the halfway point of the movie should have been one of two things. Either you establish a flashback, one more flashback of Marvin Gable and his brother actually having a fight, or maybe they have an actual reason to fight. And maybe their fight is, she didn't do it. You're just saying she didn't steal the money because you've been banging her. Well, you know what? There's plenty of women in this bar to bang. Bang one of them instead. And then maybe Marvin Gable tries to punch his brother, and his brother should fight in a way that he's kind of untouchable. You know what I mean? He should fight in a way that it's clear that he should also have a distinct fighting style where he's cool-headed. Because throughout the entire movie, Marvin Gable, Ke Quan, is always fighting as a kind of panicked nerd. A very talented fighter, but he's fighting, his character style is as a panicked nerd. Although in the one flashback we do get of him punching a few people in the faces, he looks a little bit more intense. I'd say that's really not enough. It's really not enough. We really don't know him beyond that little bit of intensity. And especially when you see him let the girl go, when we see him let Rose go, and he's not coming off as this intense person at all. It's really not playing. So I really feel like if Marvin is this emotional guy always, then the brother must fight cool. He must fight cool-headed, logical. And if Marvin Gable fights with a book, the brother fights with a bookshelf. The brother, should always kind of one-up him in some kind of way and say, listen. And he should beat him. He should beat him in this fight and say, listen, she's dying. So either you do it or someone else does it, but she's dying today. And Marvin Gable says, then it's me. Let me do it. You know what I mean? But they don't even show him filling up the hole with dirt, so it doesn't really make any sense. You know what I mean? I think it would have been better if he tells her to go and then he just starts filling up that hole. You know what I mean? Unless he's going to collect another body, it doesn't really hold water. And these are the things you can do. It doesn't matter, and I'm sorry to say this to screenwriters, film is a director's medium. If the script doesn't do it, you as the director have to do it. You as the director have to have the confidence and the will to do what needs to be done for your story. You know what I mean? I don't care if the script said he drove away. If you're on set and you go, wait a minute, why is he driving away? Doesn't he have to fill the hole? You're the director, right? That's up to you. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Unless you signed a thing saying you're not allowed to make changes, which sucks. Because if it doesn't make sense, come on. This is why the director is the director. They're the audience. They're the one who has to be able to catch this stuff. So I would really say that's one option. You have another flashback where it's the first battle. Again, action must still come from an emotional place. It must tell the story. So either you establish through flashback that this is how Marvin Gable ended up taking the gig to kill Rose, Or what the movie I feel really needed was a midpoint action sequence where Marvin and Rose are trying to find the guy who ran away, and it ends up getting them stuck in a corner where the brother and some of those thugs have shown up. And we have to have a scene. We already had the scene where in the car, I really don't like this scene. She tries to play chicken with the car to bring out the real Marvin Gable. And again, I don't feel like he changed enough. Pulling the wheel does not is not really a character change. That doesn't work. You know, if she could just see in his face, I think I see him. He wants to come out. Not there he is. Because what's he doing? He pulled the wheel. I'm sorry. That's not. That's nothing. That's really nothing. If you talk about him as the legend as he is, and that pulling the wheel from your hand is, oh, that's the guy. That line needs to be changed to, I think I see him in there somewhere, because you need to build to it. We needed a mid-movie action sequence where they are together looking for Mr. Dude who ran away, who broke off of his duct tape, and we needed for them to almost get him, and that's when the brother gets there, because it makes no sense. Everyone knows they're supposed to go to a particular house, but instead different phone calls are made so that Rose goes somewhere else. It really makes no sense at all. Everyone's going to the same place. Just have that be the middle collision. Keep everything with the Raven, because actually all of that was great. And I really wish he had one more scene. He was so good. His action was so distinct and cool. He brought such a great character to that character. That actor, just, man, he's awesome. But anyway, if you weren't going to do that, it doesn't matter. You needed a middle scene where the brother shows up drinking, and we need a beginning of this boba besides the end. Maybe he's midway through the boba, you know? Show the brother showing up, and he's about to get his hands on Rose, and that's what finally activates the old Marvin. And that's when he starts fighting like this vicious thing that we've been built up to believe is there. Because he's slipping, he's falling, he's accidental. At no point did I really feel like he was the old guy, because we haven't really established what that old guy really looks like. You know, and he should have a different voice as the old Marvin. Not that it should be so radically different from his own, but we should just feel that when Marvin is back, you know, it's like, you're not touching Rose. You know what I mean? When the dog is back, that's when you bring out this other character. And this is where the brother should be defeating him the first time, and either he gets away with Rose or Marvin gets away with Rose. But I don't know. I really don't know where it goes from there. Either way, we need this exchange to happen. We need a first fight with the brother. And again, to establish the brother as a different character. And if the brother is the one that turned him into this, we need to see the viciousness of the brother, but also the cool-headedness. Seeing him stab Sean Astin in the eye is not enough. And it's not enough to, especially if Marvin never sees the dead body of Sean, it feels like there's a missing 10 minutes of this movie. If he never sees that dead body, then it doesn't really give anything to Marvin's character as a character. It doesn't give him any more motivation. But we need to see him battle the brother and lose but not die, and kind of be forced to run because his brother is a better fighter than him. So that when we get to this finale, and we also, like, so the brother figured out that his right-hand man was betraying him. Okay, a lot of these things are so throwaway. When we come back, the final battle between them needs to be a bigger battle. And again, we really need to both, either if we shoot an earlier fight scene between them and we're coming back to this scene, we need to beef this battle up. It really needs to be brutal on another level from all the other fights. And we need to show the brother as a completely different character, as the cool-headed fighter. If Marvin fights with passion, his brother fights with logic, and he fights with paying attention to everything. He's just a psycho. He's a hyper-focused, cold-hearted killer. But we need to see Marvin step up and learn in the middle of the battle, what's my brother doing that I'm not doing? He's really thinking about what he's doing. I'm just fighting with everything I've got. Maybe I've got to fight with a little bit more, or maybe I've just got to think a little harder. Something. We need to see a transformation in Marvin. Or maybe it's just that he really hasn't let out all the way. You know what I mean? Because her line of now he's back, it just doesn't mean anything because the movie hasn't built us there. So these are the things I felt could have really beefed up the story. And I don't mean any offense to the filmmakers, but this is absolutely how I felt while I was watching it. And I'm telling you this not to chastise you or for my own ego to say that I'm some great guy. I'm telling you this because my hope is one day to work with all of you, hopefully to direct one of your movies. But if not that, then at least I would love to story consult. I would love to help you build your script. I'd love to help you really build your movie in a successful way that gets the audience to buy more tickets, to keep showing up again and again, because I want, as an audience member, to have the best time at the theater, and I want every single audience member to see the absolute best of what your stories are capable of doing. And I know you can do it, but you have to go a little bit further. You have to push a little bit harder. You have to do the things that you hate other people asking you to do, because that's what filmmaking's all about. It's all about pushing it to the next level and doing the next hardest thing that no one else has done before. And at the very least, it's about giving us an emotional place to come from, or even if we've seen this action before on some level, we haven't seen this emotion transpire, or we haven't watched this particular story. And I really do think it would have been a nice bookend if actually at the end of the movie, maybe Marvin goes back to his life. I don't know. I don't really understand where they're landing at the end of this movie, but to me it's because we didn't really get that full journey. So either he had to quit or something, but there's a lot of hats left on the ground at the end of this movie, and I really felt like at the very least, if we just built up where the emotion was coming from, I think the audience would have more to grab onto. So I hope this movie's doing well. I haven't looked at the numbers, and to tell you the truth, there's a reason I don't look at Rotten Tomatoes. There's a reason I don't talk about it. There's a reason I don't look at the budget and I don't look at the box office. And it's because the truth is you never really know how a movie's going to do until years from now. And so even though sometimes I really cut down movies and shows, I know that years from now I might see this again and I might totally change my mind. Blade Runner was a failure when it first came out. There's a lot of movies that are considered classics today that were financial and critical failures at the time they came out, because either audiences weren't ready, or if you look at right now, we are in a terrible financial time. People just aren't willing to part with their money unless they know for sure they're getting something that's worth their time. And I'm not saying this movie isn't worth anyone's time, but I'm saying the changes I would make here, I think, would have made that word of mouth much better on the circuit and might have helped this movie be a true blockbuster. And I'm not saying it's not things you guys didn't consider. I'm just saying this is me looking at it, and these are my ideas for how the storytelling could have been improved. And I hope you take me seriously, and that hopefully one day we can work together. But for now, this has been the Salawog's Final Cut. I'm Matthew Salanoa. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.